protect their son.
He says research shows 1 in 10 cases gets reported.
And what we're seeing here today is verbal and mental abuse.
The kids are going with me while you sit here by yourself. You want a drink?
This is domestic violence. This is not supposed to happen. This is not what relationships should be like. This is not how families should live. Families should not live in fear. Families should be happy.
Since the summer of 2015, we have had 19 women who have lived in our home. Monthly, we are currently receiving 7 phone calls on our hotline from domestic violence or sexual abuse cases.
Hi, I'm Larry. This is my wife, Kendra. We operate a local ministry called 5812 Rescue. The mission of 5812 is to help vulnerable women and children in our community that have been affected by domestic violence and sexual abuse. A number of years ago, we started praying about some of the needs that are in our local community. How can we help these women? How can we help people find healing? And God led us to launch 5812 as an expression of healing and rescue and assistance for women and children in our community.
I just can't imagine being in a situation like that and pulling my family and my children out of school and out of everything that is familiar with them. So 5812 to me is something that we can offer our community women and be able to stay in the same community that they are from. Allowing the women to bring support system with them. So that means that, their support system can follow them there. They can visit them there. It's close. The kids can stay oftentimes in their own school district.
As we meet these women that respond, we move them into the home, we hear their stories. It is unbelievable, the trauma and the hurt and the pain that they've been exposed to, like physically being beaten.
Women who come to us whose husbands have turned off the water. Women and children who come with bed bugs. Women and children who have fleas or don't have a washer and dryer or are told they're not allowed to leave their home.
And when we launched 5812, we said that we wanted this ministry to be undeniably about Jesus. We believe, it is our conviction that ultimate healing will come through Jesus and the gospel.
I know that women who come who don't know Jesus, just being in the home, they feel this peace and this presence that they don't understand.
Yeah, that's been one of the joys of the ministry, is to see our residents take small steps of healing and their countenance begins to lift. And I feel like we are breaking the silence in our community with abuse, with domestic violence, and empowering women to stand up and to say, this is not okay, this is wrong.
We say it doesn't happen here, but it does. It happens right here. In the last 2 years, our residents have been Wayne County and Holmes County residents and East Holmes. They need us to come alongside of them and to believe in them and to empower them to make a different decision in their life that will benefit them and their children going forward.
Yeah. So we're looking for partners in our community, people that want to partner with us with 5812 Rescue to help vulnerable women and children and to help as many people as possible.
I discovered 5812 Rescue through the newspaper. I cut out the ad and put it in a drawer. My husband's increased beatings finally left me hospitalized with brain trauma. When I walked into 5812 Rescue, I was terrified. I couldn't sleep, worrying he would find me. The staff made me feel welcomed and, more importantly, safe. My kids love it here, and because of these people, I am building myself with confidence and self-esteem. I was told for years I was useless, unimportant, and had no value, and over time I believed it. I lost myself until I came here. This staff are my friends. I know their stories and they know mine. If you are in an abusive relationship and need help, pick up the phone and call 5812 Rescue. You will be safe. Your children will be safe. I am safe.
I bring you greetings from Grace Church, and we're so grateful to be here, Kendra and I. Thank you for inviting us to come and giving us a warm welcome. So what we want to do in the next few minutes is to tell the 5812 story. And then Kendra's going to be sharing about what we do in the home with 5812, how you can partner with us, and then we want to give a blessing to moms at the end. 5812, the numbers come from Isaiah 5812. It says, "Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings." I'm going to try to stay in my seat. I'm used to standing up and preaching like crazy, so I may get up. Kendra said am I allowed to get up? Okay. Can I stand on the table? Should I stay on the floor? Oh, man. Love it. So 5812 has actually, it's actually grown out of my own story. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of the story, so to give you some backstory as far as what we're trying to do in our community. And this might be a little bit raw, so just bear with me. Is that okay if I can be a little raw? This has grown out of my own story, and I feel like, out of our story, out of our own pain, God often gives us a platform. Now I'm a pastor, I'm a husband and a father, married to an awesome woman right here. And what most people don't know about our family was that we had some dirty little secrets that in our home. And my dad has passed away now for a number of years, and I don't want to dishonor him. We were in a good place when he passed away. But what most people didn't know about our family, there's 7 of us kids, mom and dad, is that the words that I would use to describe our family was brokenness, dysfunction, pain, rejection, loneliness, and all of my growing up years, that is what I felt. And I remember as a kid just wishing that somebody would notice, that somebody would see us, that someone would come to our house and physically help us. And I don't know if people knew or not, or didn't know what to do. And I remember we used to have this room, and we lived in an old farmhouse down below New Bedford in Chilai, and this one room in our house, it was the sewing room. It was where my mother would often do sewing and quilts and things. And I remember as a little boy, I would go into this room, and I would just fall on my knees, and I would just cry. This was like the lonely place I would go. I felt so abandoned and rejected and alone. I remember just crying out to God, "God, where are you? Why is this happening to our family?" See, my dad had a problem that most people didn't know about. He was what we would call a rageaholic. He was angry and consumed with bitterness, and it consumed his life. It defined his identity. And I remember, and he would lash out at us kids and mom. And I remember in this room, often I would go in this room and I would just cry and weep and say, "God, where are you?" There were so many. My identity was formed out of, my upbringing. And growing up, my number one goal was, as a kid, I'd wake up in the morning, and the biggest desire of my life was when I get big enough, I'm going to buy a gun so that I can kill my father. That is what I grew up wanting to do. It was my main goal, to get big enough to buy a gun to kill him so that I can, get relief from this misery that we're in as a family. And one time my mother came to me, and she said to me, I was about 10 or 12. My brother was the oldest. He ran away from home as soon as he was 16 years old, and he never came back. And I remember one time my mother came to me and she said, "Larry, what should we do?" Like, I'm a little boy, and she didn't know what we should do, and I didn't know what we should do. I am confident that if there would have been a 5812, that we would have called the hotline and probably would have been ended up there. My promise to God, when I was a little kid, I remember this one time we lived on a 112-acre farm, and I was maybe 6 or 7. I don't know exactly the age. I remember I went up to the gas well we lived in a big valley, and I remember I went up on the hill and I looked out over the valley, over the home where we lived, the home which had caused so much pain in my life. And I remember making this promise to God, that if I ever grow up
and have a wife and children. I promise, with God's help, to change the trajectory of my family. And I'm here to testify to you today, with God's help, I have broken the generational sins and anger and abuse and stuff that was present in my family. Now I have an amazing wife, 5 crazy kids, and we are not perfect by any stretch, but I can say with confidence that I am not. There's a new, Kendra and I have tried to start a new family branch, a new branch on the family tree, and just believe that that's a part of my mission in life, is to do that. So a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, we started sensing God saying, we want you to create a safe place for vulnerable women and children in our community to come to, and believe that God has raised this ministry out of my own story and our hearts, our passion to help women and children that are affected by domestic violence, by sexual abuse, to be a voice and to be an advocate. And the words that we use are, we want to break the silence of these problems in our community. So many good things about living in Holmes County. It's a great place to raise a family. But if you're here long enough, you know that under the waterline, there are hidden things that are here. And, we've been pastoring here for a number of years, and, we would often, somebody would end up at the office, we'd be counseling with them, and they would trace their pain back to the home and back to what a father or a man or a male in the home did to them. Just recognize that while on the outside everything sort of looks good, but underneath oftentimes there's a struggle that nobody knows about. The words that I sense in our community, the words quiet desperation, that we're desperate. I remember as a kid, I was desperate and said, I just wish somebody would know, somebody would help. And so we use the words with 5812. We are trying to break the silence. Now, I believe that we are stepping on the devil's head. We are in enemy territory. There's more healing that he wants to give. And I don't know, even in the room this size, with this many people, maybe some of you are struggling. You're struggling with, you're feeling rejected and abandoned, and there's pain that's there. And or maybe you're the one that's inflicting the pain. We also want to come alongside of the men that are abusing or are hurting. We just came to the place in our ministry where we were like, okay, so we want to break the silence. We don't want to be complicit with, when we know that these things are happening, we want to stand up and say, this is not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay in our community. It's not okay for these things to be happening in our homes. And so we've become advocates for vulnerable women and children. Believe that God has placed us here to help women and children find healing and a place to go to, and that there's hope in Jesus Christ and the gospel for the entire family, for mom, dad, marriage, children. There's so much pain. We used to be sort of exempt from a lot of the social problems that are more nationally maybe, but not anymore. Not anymore. Our families, in our community, so many families that are struggling. So 3 years we stepped out and we launched this ministry called 5812 Rescue, and we really are trying to collaborate with. It's not a Grace thing. This is a community thing. We're working with Job and Family Services, Child Protective Services, all of the local agencies. This is something I want to tell you that they said to us when we stepped out with 5812. Because we called them and said, hey, we want to start this ministry. We want to connect with you. We want to collaborate because we're better together as churches, as agencies, as community leaders. You know what they said to us? They said, well, A, we don't like churches, and B, we don't trust pastors. I was like, are you kidding me? And you know why? Because pastors and churches are notorious for covering up domestic violence and physical or sexual abuse. And so they don't trust us. They don't trust churches, and they've sort of lumped all of us together. And one of the commitments that we made is that that in moving forward with this ministry is that we will be fully compliant, that we will report. We will call the cops. We will, involve the law. But we'll also bring the gospel. We're bringing the gospel in. And it's been almost, I think it's been 3 years now, and it's been so cool to see. They're actually calling us now and asking, they're referring people to the home. They're asking us for advice. And one of our prayers has been that we could change the perception of pastors and churches in our community, is that when we see these things happening, we don't just cover them up, but we bring them to light so that healing and hope and restoration can happen. And so that was another part of our commitment. So Kendra's going to share a little bit of like what we do at 5812. So 5812 is a safe house. It is in our community. We don't publish where it is on Facebook or in the budget. If you'd like to see it, we and you want to partner with us, we'll definitely show you where it is. But it's designed, the mission is to help vulnerable women and children. And Kendra's going to tell us what we do with residents that come there.
Yeah, so one of the most frequently asked questions is, how do women come to your home, and what do you do with them when they get there? And we do operate a hotline, but the majority of women come to us through friends or an acquaintance, someone else who's reaching out to us, and that's okay. And once a woman reaches out to us, then we meet with them and we do an intake interview. We share with them the heart for our home, and we listen to part of their story. And then we invite them in to live with us, and we create an individualized care plan for the mom and sometimes the older children. And basically what that is we just want to come alongside of them and help them unpack the pain that they have. Because we believe that Jesus is the author of the healing that needs to take place in every mother who is there. And honestly, for patterns to change and for history to change, the heart needs to change, and Jesus needs to do that. And that is our goal. That's what we want to do. We want to come alongside these women and children and bring that to them. And some of the interesting things that I've learned along the way is that I often hear, we live in Holmes County, we can't find someone who's not saved. Well, let me tell you this morning that you're not looking hard enough if that's how you feel. Because the majority of our women come from Holmes County and Wayne County and East Holmes. And some of them were my neighbors, if you can believe that. And there's some who have graduated from Highland High School and have never attended church and have spent time in our home. And the one thing that I'm realizing is that it's about a relationship with Jesus, and we sometimes automatically assume that everybody has that, and they don't. Our home, we can house 6 women, 3 with children and 3 without. And let me tell you, I know we're pressed for time. Let me share just one little God story with you. So when we stepped out and we decided that this is what we were going to do, we had an apartment given to us, a 3-bedroom apartment given to us by a widow from our church. She said, "You use it." And so we did. And all along, Larry and I, we felt this stirring in our bones that we needed this house to be a little bit closer to the East Holmes area. But we didn't know what that looked. You guys know what property brings around this, here. And so we started to continue to pray that God would give us a building and a house that would suit what we felt like was in our heart and what God had birthed inside of us. And we were given an old bed and breakfast in East Holmes. It's a large home. The rooms are huge. Almost every single room has its own bathroom. And it came with furniture. When you're starting a ministry off, you don't have tons of money. It was fully furnished. God in that moment solidified in our heart that no matter how hard this was going to be, that this is the vision that he has for our community. And it's not just a Grace thing, it's a community thing. It's a community thing. We welcome partners from every church. We welcome partners from businesses. We welcome women from all over. Because that's what our dream is for this home, that when the women and the children leave, that they would have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that they would be able to make these heart changes in them, and moving forward would be able to make stronger and healthier decisions for their family.
You know, one thing that when Larry was sharing that he didn't bring out is that I feel like God gave me this when I was thinking about this morning is that the reason that his family is so intact and loves Jesus, all of his siblings follow Jesus, is because of their mother. And you know, his mother was in such a difficult situation. Difficult, extremely difficult. And she felt alone. But you know what she did? She spent hours, still does to this day, with Jesus. And I am convinced that she didn't go to counseling. She didn't do some of these things that we recommend women do. But she spent hours on her knees with Jesus Christ. And he helped her unpack her pain. And women, this morning, if you are here and you have pain inside of your heart and you do not know how to unpack it, find somebody to help you unpack it. Because the reason is God has so many things for you to do, whether you're a mother or not. And the only way that we can fully be effective is if our pain is unpacked. And you know what? It takes a lifetime to do that. But every single day you got to get up and you got to say, I'm going to tackle this. And there are people who want to come alongside of you to do that.
Yeah, so there's great, man. I'm feeling it. You know what's uncomfortable about this for me is the greatest regret of my life is what happened with my father. And you know, God will use your pain, heal it, recycle it, and turn it into a platform. And that's what he's doing here. It's not what we didn't ask to do this. Like we believe that he's leading us to do this. And now we have a vision to launch 5812 campuses all over the world in global urban centers because there are vulnerable women and children all over the world. We just sent a team to Pattaya, Thailand a couple years ago, and we're launching our second campus there. We have our Mexico City is on our radar and other strategic areas. And what we're looking for is partners. Financial partners and prayer partners, you know, to partner with us with 5812. I failed to mention 5812 is its own separate entity, a 501c3. We run it alongside of Grace, but it's not just a Grace thing. We'd love it to be owned by our community. And you can partner with us for this local and global vision. Financially, I believe you have a sheet like this with some on-ramps for giving. If you'd like to avail yourself to that, we just ask you to pray and say, God, what do you want us to do? And yeah, the last thing I wanted to say was what Kendra already mentioned. Is there something else? I think was my mother. You know, as hard as it was growing up, my mother, this is Mother's Day. We honor all the moms in the room. My mother is my hero. I mean, what she did, what she instilled in us, she has given our family a legacy of faithfulness to Christ that has shaped who I am as a husband, a father, a Christ follower. And, you know, moms, thank you. Thank you for everything you do, everything you give. And I want to say a prayer for the moms. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Okay, let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for the 5812 and the work that you're doing there. And we're just so grateful that your hand of favor, the ways you've provided, and the women and children that we're helping. And on this Mother's Day, God, I just want to lift up the mothers to you. The mothers that are here that are doing well, the mothers that are struggling, that have pain, God, that all of us would lean into the healer, Jesus Christ. We pray that the moms would feel appreciated and valued. They would feel loved and cherished. God, help us as men, help us as husbands to love them like Christ loved the church, God. Oh God, I pray that you would raise up strong and godly families and godly marriages in this community. And it would start with a man and a woman being committed to Jesus and the gospel. And out of that, God, you would bring transformation to our community and to the world, to this broken world that we live in. Our yes is on the table, Jesus. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.